Today we've got a fun story about a driver that refused to back down when another driver tried to force them to reverse. We'll get into that story in just a bit, but first, my sisters and I crashed our dad's wedding party. I, 31-year-old female, and my 3 sisters have a dad. I know everyone does, but we have one of those dads. The ones who are just not very good at fathering and have never really been around in a meaningful way. Dad, 60s, male, had a series of fiancés since our stepmother divorced him 10 years ago, and so when he told us a few years ago he was engaged, again, we didn't take him very seriously. Most of us live far from him, and the real star of this story is S, 32-year-old female, who lives in the same state as him. For his wedding, he asked her to cook everything. All the sandwiches for his 400 invited guests, all the sides, and even the cakes. She said yes, and as a result, was incredibly stressed. Here's where it gets good. S had recently dyed the underside of her hair navy blue. You couldn't see it unless her hair was up, and it was short enough that it was hard to tell anyway. Dad told her that she needed to dye it a normal color or she would ruin his wedding pictures, so a plan was hatched. I was certainly the driving force behind this as the day of the wedding drew near, and we all drove in to see our sister working her butt off and our dad not paying the least attention to us. Then I found out his new wife's kids were in the wedding party. In fact, they were the whole wedding party, and we weren't. They were all wearing navy blue, and we were expected to wear any other color. Here's where the plan comes in. S was the only one who communicated what color we should wear, so I called everybody and asked for 2 things. 1, to dye their hair blue, and 2, to wear a navy blue dress. My sisters L, 36-year-old female, and J, 34-year-old female, went shopping with me, and we hunted for 3 or so hours for a navy blue dress in July and purchased the best ones we could find. Then we all went to Sally's Beauty Supply and got demi-dye for our hair. We arrived the next day at the wedding with blue hair, blue dresses, and crap-eating grins. Dad wasn't thrilled. He asked what the heck we did to our hair and said something to the effect of point taken. Also, 400 people did not attend. Maybe 20 did. Yes, it was incredibly satisfying. I mean, clearly there's some broken family dynamics that we don't know about here and probably don't need to know about, but given the way that the dad reacted about the original sister's hair, when she's bending over backwards to make this wedding so perfect, I think this is more than an apropos response. Cassiopeia responded, I'm sorry about your dad, but you ladies rock. Sadly, my kid's dad is kind of like this. Honestly, if your dad has a job and is supporting himself, count yourself lucky. Puzzled Bag 2989 responded, we're lucky in that way. He's never expected us to pay any of his bills because we would all completely refuse. I think his wife mostly supports him now. Regardless, I text him at Christmas and his birthday, and he calls me the day after my birthday. Also, by the way, hello, my name is Brendan, and if you guys enjoy these ProRevenge videos, it would be so cool and awesome if you left a like or commented down below if you're listening to our podcast. That being said, our next story is, refuse service when legally you can't? Hope you enjoy the fine. I live in Portugal. Here, when something happens at a commercial space, you write in the complaints book. My parents own a business, which means I'm fairly well informed about how these things work. I had recently had an encounter at this kiosk with this man, and he lingered at my card, checking numbers, names, flipped it over, looking at the CVV. It was uncomfortable. On to the exchange. I say, good morning, I'd like 2 packs of Winston 100s 26 cigarettes. He proceeds to ask me for my card with a hand gesture, and then he says, it's 12.20, hand gestures again. I say, I would prefer to insert the card myself, and he goes, you can't do that. Then I say, I won't touch the machine at all, only insert the card. Then he throws the machine down in disbelief and says, I can't let you do that. And then I go, are you refusing service? And he says, yeah. I ask for the complaints book. He refused, which legally he can't, but it was just me and him. I wait until another client shows up and ask for it again. He relents and gives it to me. As I open it, I realize I didn't have a pen. You have to write out your complaint. I ask for one and he refuses. I say, okay. As soon as I open the book, I see something wrong. The first complaint is completely ripped out. All 3 pages are. The first page is for the person who makes the complaint, the second is a copy for the business, and the third is to remain in the book. Under no circumstance is the third page to disappear, even if it's a mistake, and or taken back by the person who makes the complaint. It must remain in the book. Seeing as I had no pen, I start the process online. Take the info and start snapping pictures of the missing pages. As soon as he saw me taking pictures, he does a beeline from around the counter to me and tries to take the book away. I said I have every right to keep this book until I'm done with my complaint. He gets huffy and more clients show up. He goes back behind the counter. The thing about these complaint books is that you write it in ink, but then you have to follow through and submit them online to the proper authority depending on the complaint. But I didn't have a pen, so I bypassed the ink format and immediately submitted online, mentioning the weird analysis of my card, the refusal of service, and as the last middle finger on the freak you sandwich, Steve Hofstetter, if you know, you know. I also mentioned the missing pages with pictures of the missing pages itself, including the business stamp in the same picture, so they can't refute and say it's some other book. Now, because it was online, it goes straight to the authority essay, and you can choose which department depending on the complaint. After an hour of nicotine withdrawal, of looking the business up the pictures and writing the complaint itself, I hand the book in with no written complaint. He opens it, chuckles to himself, and smugly says, "Did you give up because you didn't have a pen?" I say no, because I didn't have a pen. I decided to submit it directly online, and as my last mic drop moment, I said I didn't feel comfortable writing it in the book as the first complaint had magically disappeared from the book. The color drained from his face because we both knew what would happen. Even if they don't take the complaint seriously, tampering with the book is absolutely taken seriously, and that absolutely will be followed up and fined accordingly. Then I smiled and said I wish I had a pen and left. I mean, I'm not from Portugal, never been to Portugal, so this is definitely a foreign concept to me, but it just sounds like, he was not very good at his job, he was rude, and he deserves a little bit of comeuppance, and you were able to achieve that, so good for you. Crafty Shape 2743 commented, "Is this complaint book just a Portugal requirement, or is it more widespread? I've never heard of anything like it. It sounds interesting. Do all stores and companies have a complaint book? As a customer, can you ask to see their complaint book before you do business with a company?" And Black Angel 715 responded, "Every commercial space has one. It's like a formal suggestion box for negative complaints, but taken seriously. The third page of every complaint remains in the book to provide context for the next user if related. You can absolutely ask for it and consult if you want, but that's not really practiced. Her as a normal client, but it would completely make sense to see it if you were to go into business with a certain entity and see how they operate. It at no point can be refused by owner or worker, and if it is, the person complaining has more ammunition to put in the complaint." Our next story is, "Scammer called me from a live number. I called him back over 100 times for the next hour. So I get a lot of phone calls like everyone else, but this guy called me twice in a row, so I called him back because it's my work phone. It tried to tell me that I won the publishing clearinghouse. I told him I would split the $5 million with him if he could just tell me my name, which I told him when he answered. He still got it wrong and I laughed at him. We cussed each other out for a few seconds before he hung up on me, but I was just getting warmed up. I proceeded to call him back over 100 times for the next hour. He would answer every so often and cuss me out and threaten me before hanging up. I stopped for now, but I saved his number in my phone. I'll be calling him periodically just to harass him. And before anyone says I'm wasting my time, this is something I actually get a lot of enjoyment out of. It's free entertainment as far as I'm concerned. Now, I would say I don't agree with doing this with telemarketers because they're just doing their job, but people that are blatantly trying to scam you, absolutely spin it back on them, annoy them, blow their phone up. I love it. That absolutely is free entertainment. TAS Double Stars responded, "I've done this with my personal phone. Not only did I keep dialing the number and get them to answer, as soon as I heard the ringtone, I initiated another call and merged it to the first. It was funny listening to their confusion as they finally realized they were both working for the same scam shop." Our next story is, "You can't park there." I once parked in what somebody else deemed to be their space, and to teach me a lesson, they blocked me in with their car and stayed and sat in their car waiting for me to come back. I know it was deliberate because of the tirade of abuse they directed at me when I parked there. Not to mention that I'd often get people shouting at me when I parked there on the school run. I figured they probably wanted me to go plead with them to move so I could get my car out so they could tell me off and make me apologize. Well, they didn't get their way. Being one who isn't afraid to cut his nose off to spite his face, I left the car there and walked home. The next day, I rode the bus and saw that my car was now free, so I could have drove it back. Nope, got the bus back as well. Then spent the next fortnight getting taxis there and back because I'm stubborn and petty like that. 2 weeks later, and I eventually went back and moved my car. Funny thing, no one ever complained about me parking there ever again. Yet, there are a lot of pretentious people out there that think that They're just entitled to the best things in life, and usually parking spots like this are in ideal locations, usually close to the entrance of a building or structure. And if the parking spaces aren't assigned, you're not obligated to give it up. So, they threw the first stone, you threw a couple more stones right back at them. All's fair in love and war. Sissy Hayes responded, "Hang on, this car space, is it somewhere close to your work or a random spot on the street?" Sheila then commented, "OP's history shows they apparently have a history of interesting parking choices. In any case, they're lucky nobody reported it abandoned and got it removed." Our next story is, "You send me junk faxes, I'll send them right back." Our company, believe it or not, still receives faxes. This happened a few years ago, but we can send and receive faxes through email. One local business was blowing up our fax line with advertisements, and I finally had enough. I attached a copy of their advertisement to a new email, typed it out to their fax number, and then copied and pasted it into their email address about 500 times. Maybe even more, I honestly don't know. I copied and pasted about 20 times, then copied and pasted those 20 at a time, then 60 at a time, and so on. A quick send of the email, and we spent the next 6 or 7 hours sending this company a copy of their advertisement. They figured out our phone number and finally called us asking to stop faxing them. I told them if they stopped faxing us, we would stop faxing them. However, what's done was done, and they would need to let our fax run its course. That was the last day we ever received a fax from that company. So again, not admonishing doing your job and sending out advertisements, but there's no need to blow it up. That's annoying, and when you get a taste of your own medicine, you realize how annoying that is, and gladly they stopped. Good story. Elusive K replied, "This reminds me of a story I was told. Some 10 or 15 years ago, a new girl was hired. She was asked to send a fax to another department in the morning. By the end of the day, the other department head called this department head. 'Stop faxing us the document. It's occupying our fax line.' So this department head asked the girl, 'Hey, why do you keep faxing that out?' The girl replied, 'I'm trying to fax it, but the paper keeps coming back.'" Our next story is, "Sales guy selling my dad. How do you install it?" When I was a kid, back in the 60s, a lot of companies were calling to sell aluminum siding for the house. This happened almost every night at dinner time as we were sitting down to eat. One night, my dad answers the phone, gets up and starts talking to this guy. We're all puzzled because my dad hated talking during dinner time. For about 20 minutes, my dad is asking questions and being sold on the benefits of aluminum siding, colors, types, durability, etc. Then, finally, my dad says, "This sounds great and I'd love to have you come out, but I have just one question. How does this aluminum siding get attached to the brick?" After a pause, we can hear the guy telling my dad that aluminum siding is really, edit, not meant for a brick house, and clarifying, "Do you have a brick house?" Then my dad, in a loud voice, says, "Yes, I've got a brick house, and I know dang well it won't stick to brick." And that's exactly what I've been telling you morons for over a dozen times, hoping you'd stop calling. They stopped calling. Sometimes someone just needs to be busted over the head with a dose of their own ignorance to finally see the big picture. Thank you for checking this person. Buck Rose responded, "Friend of mine was getting repeated calls from a siding salesman, even after she had said no a few times. Finally, she told him, 'Fine, come give me an estimate.' He was not happy when he arrived at her lovely brick house." Our next story is, "If you could do it to me, I can do it to you." When I was 20, I lived with my mom and stepdad in his mom's house. I paid $400 in rent and paid for my own groceries and covered one bill. This was to set me up for being an adult. I shared a room with my sister, 18. Later, I shared a room with her fiancé/husband. She also paid $400. The room was a small 11 by 11 foot with a small closet. My sister and I were both in college and worked full-time. My stepdad would get mad because we would be on the computer until early morning hours doing homework or on social media. He got a device and it turned off the internet, which we paid for, at 10 o'clock via remote. If he got a wild hair, he would keep it off. Now he lives with me and my mom because he lost his house with get-rich-quick schemes. He started staying up late watching TV. I pay for all the streaming that he watches and I pay for the internet. He pays for no bills other than rent. Well, I put a limit on the internet, so now he has to go to sleep at 12 o'clock and can't watch anything after 6 a.m. He's upset his TV no longer works past 12 a.m. He doesn't know I put a limit on it and his TV solely, and the rest of the devices in the apartment work perfectly fine. Just steering along the gravy train until it happens to you. That does kind of suck, doesn't it? Sorry, Dad. Mountain Goat Joe responded, "Play this as a long con. Let him stew on it for as long as possible. Then, someday, when it comes up in a random conversation, just say, 'Oh yeah, I programmed the TV to do that.' When he asks why, say, 'Well, you taught me to be an adult, and you taught me that as an adult, I can run my home how I see fit, including turning off the TV at 10 p.m., just like you did with me when I was in college and trying to use the internet to study. You showed me that adults don't have to have good reasons to do things. Say it all matter-of-factly, and then just walk away." Our next story is, "Call me nonstop, I'll give you a reason to stop." So, I've recently been rate shopping for a mortgage. This already sucks due to the current rates, but out of my control entirely. That's a separate story. One company in particular cannot understand when I ask them to not call 5 times within a 2-hour period. I answered a call while under a car trying to do an inspection at work. Told the guy in nice words, but a harsh way, that it's hard to do my job when you call this much in a short time span. I'm under a car currently and will call you when I have time. Fast forward to my first day off after this incident, and multiple calls between then. I finally had some time with the missus, got some breakfast, and was enjoying my morning. Then the call came. I tried to answer, and they immediately hung up. They called back again and did the same thing. Petty revenge activated. I called back, and they answered in one ring. Gave their intro, which I promptly cut short by saying, "Sorry, I'm a bit busy now. Currently having sexual relations. Can I call you back at a more convenient time?" Made a groaning and breathing sound. I could only imagine the look on the guy's face when he said, "Sure, no problem." Click. The missus and I laughed hard after that one. I mean, unless we're talking about a landline here, why don't you silence your phone or put it on vibrate so that it's not constantly interfering with your job, your relations in bed, whatever the case may be. Just, yeah. Jag666UK replied, "Once I had a cold call, and before I'd even finished saying hello, this guy just launches into a spiel. When I finally managed to get a word in, I told him, rather impolitely, that I wasn't effing interested, to which he promptly told me that his company didn't tolerate abusive language and not to swear. I told him that if he didn't like my effing language, don't call my effing phone, and hung up." Our next story is, "Property manager didn't take bedbugs seriously, but I sure did. I moved into a new apartment, and from the day I moved in, the property manager, I'll call her Megan, was always slightly rude. Nothing huge, but for example, the day I came to sign the lease and pay my deposit, she waited until I was at the office to say I could only pay the deposit with a money order and was annoyed I didn't bring it with me despite never being informed. Like I said, nothing huge, just sort of inconsiderate. Well, I was getting bites on my legs for a couple of months, but assumed it was happening when I was going on walks during the day. I was wrong. My partner woke up face to face with a bedbug a few months into the lease. I called the leasing office to tell them the unit had bedbugs, and Megan's immediate response was to tell me how much I would have to pay to get rid of them. I told her I hadn't brought in the bedbugs, so I was confused about why I had to pay for their removal. She told me I had definitely brought them in because no one else had reported bedbugs, to which I responded, "Well, if I had known you were going to charge me hundreds of dollars, I wouldn't have told you either. I would have gotten rid of them myself." At this point, there had been no bedbug inspection or anything, so she had no evidence to say whether they were coming in from a neighboring apartment or if they were my bedbugs. I know bedbugs are easy to pick up in public places, including U-Hauls, so it's totally possible they could have come in with me. Definitely not denying that. I asked Megan if she was going to talk to the people in the surrounding units and have those apartments inspected for bedbugs too. She said no, because no one else had complained about bedbugs. That seemed weird to me because I know someone who worked in a hotel, and if a room got bedbugs there, they would fumigate all the rooms in that area. I told Megan that I'd be happy to inform my neighbors myself and that they should be on the lookout, and she asked me not to. Here's where she really ticked me off. I'm trans, and my legal name is my dead name, which I told her the day I moved in and saw her make a note of my chosen name in my file. She texted me and referred to me by my dead name, again telling me the bedbugs were mine and I shouldn't take any action with the neighbors. I corrected her on my name, and all she said was, "Sorry, that's what's in my file." She'd called me the right name before, so it really felt like she did it on purpose to be cruel. The exterminator came and did treatments over the course of weeks, but I ended up having to buy a clothing steamer to murder the bedbugs myself because the exterminator's methods didn't get rid of them. Well, I was getting home from work one day and saw Megan around the property, obviously giving some prospective residents a tour. I immediately started scheming in my head, thinking about things I could have said, but figured I had missed my chance. I was wrong. I got dressed for the gym and walked down to the parking lot, and lo and behold, she was right at the base of my staircase about to show the prospective renters an apartment in my building. I got so freaking excited. I walked past them with the biggest smile on my face and said in the loudest, cheeriest voice I could, "Thank you so much for your help with the bedbug situation. I appreciate it so much." Her jaw dropped. It was incredible. She texted me about 15 minutes later, ticked. She said something like, "If you have a problem with me, you can talk to me about it in private." I responded, "Oh, oops, I didn't realize bedbugs are such a big problem. I just wanted to say thank you." Those people did not end up renting from her. Oops. I mean, let's be real, if there's bedbugs in the unit, whether you brought them in or not, and they're not going to do anything about it, you need to shout from the rooftops so that every single resident in that place knows that there's a potential infestation, and just watch this rude lady lose all her business. Old Bar 3078 responded, "I love this story. Also, you really should have told your neighbors. If nothing else, then for purely selfish reasons. Only if every unit is fumigated can you actually get rid of them." Hot Ugly Queer responded, "The exterminator who came in told me that if they're traveling better apartments, you'll be able to see evidence of them, aka pooped out blood, around the outlets and vents they're traveling through, and there wasn't any evidence. I don't think he had any reason to lie about it or mislead me, since the apartment hired him, and he would have made more money if he had to do the other units too. I ended up getting to know some of my neighbors later on and talked to them about it, so they did eventually get informed, but never had any bedbug issues themselves." Our next story is, "I didn't back down on a clown trying to force me to reverse. I was driving down my street, a narrow little street, and was just outside my house, ready to turn in when the following thing happened. By the way, I assume most of you have a driving rule for narrow streets that if you're going to overtake or pass parked cars on your side, you stop and wait for oncoming traffic to pass before you go on. Well, this driver decided to ignore the rules, and she definitely saw me before swerving over to my side of the road and drove towards me fast in her SUV. Thing is, as I said, I was actually just about to turn into my driveway. I was home, basically, but she drove up so near to me that I couldn't turn in. So I left the car, locked it, and strolled over to my house, up the driveway, opened my front door, and just stood there looking at her blankly. She got the message and even waved a sort of embarrassed apology. Not Canada here, but UK. All sorted in about a minute or two. Edit. She reversed back and did that wave and grin thing. I was a bit disappointed in myself I didn't grab a beer and a deck chair to elongate the situation, but it was a public road, so I thought I'd make my point and then get the road clear. No other commuters were inconvenienced in this incident, no queues, etc. Yeah, bad drivers are the worst. I really think that people need to be tested annually on their driving aptitude, but that's my own personal story, perhaps for a future day. Joe402 commented, "This reminds me of the joke's story about the ship telling the other vessel to change course. The ship says, 'Adjust your course to avoid a collision.' The vessel says, 'No, you change course to avoid a collision.' The ship gets all huffy and pulls military credentials and orders the other vessel to change course immediately. The vessel responds, 'We're a lighthouse. Your move.' Same energy. I like it." Our next story is, "I crapped the Wi-Fi off so my roommates couldn't use it as they let their friends use my room. From 2022 to 2023, I lived with 3 other girls in a college apartment for a year. Beautiful apartment. I miss it. They all had been friends since high school, and I needed a place to stay, and upon meeting them at first, I was excited to get to know new people and experience a good year living with them. The lease began in June 2022, and from June to November 2022, we all got along just fine. I have a dog-sitting business, and it was really picking up around that time. In hindsight, I would have never gotten an apartment, as I was barely there, unfortunately. In November 2022, my best friend spent the night at said apartment. A few days passed after our sleepover, and I just got back from a dog-sitting job. I saw a blanket in my room that was not mine. I asked my best friend if it was hers, and she said no. I texted the group chat with my roommates, and they all did not claim the blanket. I thought it was weird, so I just tossed it on the couch in the living room for someone to claim. Fast forward maybe a few weeks or something. I noticed a t-shirt that was not mine in my room. Again, asking them if it was theirs, none collected. I do not do my laundry at the apartment, as I live close by and just take my stuff home, so it never gets mixed up with their stuff. More time passed, and at this point, I find women's underwear in my bedroom. Again, I text the group chat whose it is. No one claims it. I know it's not mine, as it's not the same size as all my other pairs, and I only buy the same size. This is very weird at this point. I've asked them in the past if anyone slept in my room or even used it to do the deed. To be honest, if they asked me ahead of time if their friends could crash in my room, as I'm not there dog sitting sometimes, I would 100% be cool with it. No one has ever stolen anything in my room, but I found more items in my room that are not mine. I considered getting a camera, but to be honest, if someone is having hooked up in my room, I do not want that on camera. As I said, no one ever stole anything, so it was never that deep to me, but I was confused why they kept lying. The last item I found was close to the end of our lease, ended in May 2023, and I found an Apple Watch. That's not cheap, so when I asked who it was, no one claimed it. They were all well off, so I guess they didn't care. They really did not want to admit anything or take back an expensive item that was probably one of their friends. I was so confused and shocked, so I asked the landlord if I could put a lock on my door and explain the situation with the screenshots of our group chat. The landlord said I could not due to the lease agreement. I was kind of ticked at this point because I was being gaslit into thinking all these items were mine. One of the girls even said, maybe your stuff got mixed in with the wash. I told her how I don't do the wash at the apartment. She had nothing else to say. When we finally moved out, I made sure to avoid them at this point because it was too awkward. Nothing came of it, but I think back on it occasionally, and I could still not fathom why they'd let people in my room, and even if it was a mistake, they could have easily said, sorry, we didn't know people went into your room. And I would have said, as long as you ask, it's cool with me. So with all of that being said, I was in charge of the Wi-Fi. I turned the Wi-Fi off occasionally whenever this happened. They used the library to do work or a friend's house, so it's not like they couldn't get their work done, but I was admittedly petty and shut the Wi-Fi off on occasion. Right, so if nothing's getting stolen, missing, damaged, why wouldn't they just fess up? This is definitely a puzzling story, but I guess it had an okay resolution. I don't really know. We kind of were left hanging there, but yeah, interesting. Lady Irish responded, imagine even asking the landlord for permission before putting a lock on your bedroom door, let alone accepting no for an answer. Anyone else having this problem in the future, just install a key lock doorknob, provide the landlord a key, and reinstall the old plain one and get the key back when you move out. They're not going to boot you over a doorknob, and they're not going to keep any of your security deposit as long as you switch it back. No harm, no foul. Our next story is, want to unfairly grade students? Let's see what the school board thinks. Many years ago, in my senior year of high school, I was placed in English class with my close friend. We'll call him Jack, which I was extremely excited about. The only issue was that our teacher, we'll call her Mrs. Smith, was known for being absolutely horrible and targeting students that she didn't like. A few weeks into the class, Jack and I started to realize that he was getting lower grades on assignments where our work was practically identical. Since he was such a close friend, this really ticked me off, especially because it was obvious that Mrs. Smith wasn't even reading my assignments. I'd consistently get 100%, while Jack's grades would come back anywhere from 60% to 80% for no apparent reason. I even tried to edit and revise his work before submitting it, thinking that maybe my teacher just liked my writing style compared to him. This, of course, changed nothing, and cemented the fact that she gave him worse grades solely because she didn't like him. This continued to happen throughout the entire semester, and at this point, I had over 100% in the class, while Jack had somewhere around a C-. Since I was already guaranteed to get an A, I decided to do something pretty stupid in hindsight, but Jack and I still laugh about it to this day. One of our last assignments was to write a report on a movie of our own choosing. But instead of doing that, I decided to write the lyrics of First Day Out by T. Grizzly repeatedly until it hit the 4-page requirement for the assignment. If you're unfamiliar with the song, it's extremely vulgar and has no place in an academic environment. Unsurprisingly, when we got our assignments back, I received an A+ once again, while Jack got a B-. The next day, Jack and I went to the principal's office and presented our grades, giving concrete proof that Mrs. Smith unfairly graded students. The principal was obviously shocked and said that they would look into it. I was also told not to turn something vulgar like that in again, but that's beside the point. A few weeks later, the semester was wrapping up and we still hadn't found anything about Mrs. Smith until my graduation counselor informed me that the school board had reviewed my assignment and were moving forward with firing her. Apparently, this was one of many complaints she had received over the years, and my assignment was the straw that broke the camel's back. The next semester, Mrs. Smith had been replaced with a substitute teacher, and to my knowledge, she no longer works at the school. You know it's bad when the student that's acing the class with an A+ is taking exception to this and turning the teacher in. It sucks that some teachers just have that preconceived bias, and instead of doing their job, they just play politics. So Kudos to OP for putting their grades on the line in order to oust this shiesty teacher. Loose1 2020 commented, "Kudos for having your friends back and getting rid of a corrupt, biased, and piece of crap teacher messing with kids' futures. We had an interesting instructor at my university. Teachers were allowed to set their own grading scales. A few had it at 10 points, but the vast majority had it at 7. But one had it at 3 points. That meant any score below 89 was a failing grade. The university stepped in and told him such a scale was unacceptable because an 85 shouldn't be a failing grade. They mandated no scale lower than 7 points." Our next story is Steve's Manifesto. Alright y'all, let me tell you about one of the most accidentally legendary people I ever worked with. This wasn't me, but I witnessed it firsthand, and it still pops into my head at random moments like, did that actually happen? So a few years ago, I was in the Disney College Program, DCP, at Walt Disney World. If you know, you know. Basically, a bunch of overworked, underpaid college kids running around trying to make magic happen while slowly losing our sanity. I was working at Backlot Express in Hollywood Studios, slinging burgers and dodging angry guests who thought I personally ruined their vacation. Now, Backlot was mostly staffed by Disney's cute way of saying college interns who will work any shift for $12 an hour. And it was like 98% girls. There were a few guys, but then there was Steve. Not his real name, but spiritually, he's a Steve. And y'all, Steve was built different. First off, Steve was the most serious person I've ever met in a fast food setting. He took this job with the intensity of a man training for the Olympics. While the rest of us were just trying to survive another day of sticky floors and screaming children, Steve was studying the job, like analyzing it. He was also hilariously, weirdly wholesome about it. He used to send daily motivational messages to all the other CPs, which was actually kind of sweet. Like, you'd be waking up at 6 a.m. for a soul-crushing morning shift, and there'd be a message from Steve in the group chat like, "Rise and shine, everyone. Another day to make magic. We got this." And it was like, dang, okay, Steve, I guess we do got this. The girls even started calling themselves Steve's Angels because, in some unspoken way, we had all just accepted that we were in his little motivational cult. But his real masterpiece, his magnum opus, Steve, sweet, intense, dedicated Steve, wrote a full-scale, multi-page engineering-style report on the entire operation of Backlot Express. No, I am not joking. No, this was not for a class. This was just a passion project. This thing was super detailed. I'm talking multiple pages of analysis on everything. He had sections breaking down the kitchen layout, order efficiency, cleaning procedures. He even wrote a full guide on how to take out the trash. Like, sir, this is a theme park burger joint. No one is out here reading the art of trash removal before dragging a bag to the dumpster. Most days after work, we would share our stories from the day in the group chat, mostly bashing the management or complaining about horrible guests. At first, Steve would try to offer encouragement and remind us to smile and make some magic. Then one day he just snapped. I don't really know what happened, but someone must have really done something bad to get him that angry. Apparently, he got so frustrated with the management that he decided that the best thing to do would be to write up a freaking manifesto to tell them how bad they were. And the best part? He was so proud of it. He kept saying he wanted to post it in the break room so everyone, including management, could read his findings and, presumably, have their minds blown by his revolutionary insights. Management, unfortunately, did not share this vision. Apparently, when the word got out about Steve's Disney fast food manifesto, the higher-ups kind of panicked. Like they genuinely thought he was exposing them or something. There were rumors that they tried to fire him over it, which, can you imagine getting fired from the DCP for writing a report? Not for stealing in the dorms, not for fighting a guest, but for a deeply passionate critique of hamburger logistics. I don't even know what happened to him in the end, but I truly hope he found his calling. Maybe he's working at NASA, optimizing rocket launch protocols. Maybe he's still sending daily motivational messages to coworkers. Maybe, just maybe, he's out there right now, watching a restaurant crew take the trash out the wrong way and thinking, I tried to warn them. I'll never forget Steve. If anyone ever writes a dissertation on fast food efficiency, I know who the real expert is. Update! Hey everyone, I have an update. First off, I was not expecting that post to blow up like it did. Y'all are so funny, and I love how invested everyone got in Steve's saga. Some of you wanted to buy him a beer, some of you wanted to marry him, and honestly, I get it. The man was passionate. A few of you even suggested that he might be a Redditor himself, which, yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if he's out there right now, deep in some niche efficiency subreddit, writing essays on optimal package sorting techniques. Anyway, after all that, I had to know what happened to him. So I haven't been able to find Steve himself. He's either off the grid or in a bunker somewhere drafting another manifesto, but I reached out to a former coworker who knew him better. And y'all, this update is so on brand. Turns out, Steve was actually studying industrial engineering during the DCP, which suddenly makes everything make sense. Of course he was treating Backlot Express like a full-scale efficiency experiment, and after Disney, he actually tried to stay in the theme park industry. He worked at a couple of other parks, fully committed to a career in theme park management, because, let's be real, if anyone was destined to optimize ride queues and streamline churro distribution, it was Steve. Unfortunately, Disney and Universal both rejected him when he applied for full-time positions after graduation, which, their loss, honestly. Can you imagine how much more efficient those parks could have been? The man wrote a step-by-step guide on taking out the trash. He was ready. But this is where it gets even better. Steve ended up taking a job with UPS, and honestly, that might be the most fitting career move of all time. The king of logistics, now working for a logistics giant. I think he's somewhere in a warehouse right now, aggressively optimizing package flow, drafting the Steve Manifesto, Volume 2, The Science of Shopping. My coworker didn't have much beyond that, but I'm still digging. If I find out more, or if I somehow track down Steve himself, I'll update y'all again. Steve's Angels, assemble! So this was a really fun story. I like how, at first, it seemed like OP was going to kind of take the satirical approach and make fun of Steve, but it's like, how can you not read this and appreciate just how awesome Steve and his passion for, taking out garbage at Disney World is. This was cool. I like it. Accomplished Dog 3715 commented, I volunteered at a college football game concession stand once a few years ago. The sheer, unneeded chaos that went on for 5+ hours, I had a lot of suggestions as the night went on, but kept my mouth shut as I was a total newbie and didn't want to hurt any feelings. I finally just planted myself at the bottles of water and would hand those out as needed. I might have a bit in common with old Steve there. Our next story is, not being creative, I will make you be creative. I work as an English teacher in Asia. I have a group of 5 disruptive P6 boys who don't put any effort into their work and are simply lazy. Now, my lessons involve the creative side of English, so this means students have to create posters, comics, cartoons, etc., using the target language. While most students would use coloring and pencils and markers, etc., these boys would just scribble and hand work in. I mean, a 7-year-old would produce better work. I tried a points and reward system and nothing worked. I even showed examples of great work. Still nothing. I was tearing my hair out at this point. One day, I walked into a random stationery shop and saw the most amazing pencil and marker kit. It had markers, colored pencils, pastels, and glitter. I purchased the kit. The kit was about $5 USD, so it was really cheap. I would bring it to lessons with me. I opened it on my desk and showed the class what I used to create the example. One of the boys asked to borrow a colored pencil, which led to all the group asking to use a pencil or crayon, etc. Their work improved and was more creative. I took it a step further. I purchased 5 of these kits and gave them to each of these boys. The result? Some of the best classwork. The downside was the whole class wanted their own kit. So I ended up buying one for each student in class. So now my whole class is creative and puts in effort. I mean, here I think you just have to appreciate the destination and not the journey. However the teacher went about doing it, now the whole class is creative and actually working at their projects, so good on ya. Beneficial Nimitz68 commented, I think while great, the petty part is she tricked them into learning and doing the work by providing them with the means to create and not feel singled out. I would put this in a wholesome form too, or feel good. Take 2 pictures, one that's not entirely created and second that is better. Our next story is, my fiancé gets unintentional revenge against her work bully. This happened at my fiancé's job and I couldn't not share. My fiancé, 22-year-old female, works at a daycare. She loves working with kids and loves working there. She gets along with most everyone at the daycare. I say most everyone because this story is about her and her work bully, who I'll refer to as Karen. From the first day my fiancé started working in the baby room, Karen had some sort of vendetta against her, never saying or doing anything to her face, but just trash-talking my fiancé behind her back to no end. My fiancé found out through one of her coworkers. My fiancé didn't want to cause drama, so she wanted to let it go, but it definitely made her sad. But luckily, that coworker reported it to their boss, and for a time, Karen actually stopped. At first, it seemed forced, but Karen actually confessed her stress and troubles with her husband to my fiancé. For a few weeks, my fiancé felt bad and thought they were becoming at least friendly. For a few weeks, the same coworker told my fiancé that Karen was back at it again. This time, my fiancé and the coworker both reported Karen, and this is where we found out she was already in hot water. Apparently, Karen is called out multiple times. Most recently, she texted their boss, who didn't see it till 10 minutes before her shift, which didn't give enough time to find a replacement. Also, this isn't the first time Karen has caused drama in the daycare. My fiancé's report was the nail in the coffin to get Karen fired. The best part about all of this is, with Karen gone, they need a new full-time teacher to teach that class, and my fiancé was offered it. The funniest part is that Karen had to come back to collect her stuff, and my fiancé was teaching that class now. According to my fiancé, Karen was pee and pouty the entire time. And to unalive her with kindness, my fiancé gave her a big hug and in her most enthusiastic voice wished her good luck. I love her. Also, as a side note, the coworker that helped report Karen straight up asked Karen why she hates my fiancé, and her response was just, I don't know, I just don't like her. I'm still shocked she just admits something like that without reason. Got her fired, took her job. Hopefully this warns against the hazards of gossiping and talking crap in the workplace. Just in general, it's not cool. Avid Learner Bot responded, Karen's antics sound like something out of a sitcom. It's wild how she didn't see it coming. I love that your fiancé turned the tables with kindness. It's almost like a masterclass in dealing with difficult people. Who knew a daycare could be such a drama stage? And, well, getting promoted while Karen's packing her bags is just the cherry on top. Here's to hoping for plenty more days where you're teaching and she's, well, not. DarkGamer303 replied, the thing is, Karen had her own kid in the daycare too. Their family wasn't bad broke or anything, but the daycare was giving her a great discount on childcare, and she threw it all away over whatever grudge she had. Our next story is, I don't fold my husband's clothes. My husband is a doctor, the kind that works on Monday through Friday, fixed schedule, no emergency, etc. And we recently moved to a city closer to his job, so I'm a stay-at-home mom until I can find daycare for my kid. My husband thinks because I'm home, I must do everything. Cooking, cleaning, grocery shopping, checking mail, shoveling snow from double-car driveway, and doing everything for a kid, too. Anytime I've tried to have a conversation about it, it's turned into an argument. Since the last 2 to 3 weeks, every time I fold and wash laundry, I've started just rolling his scrubs, his clothes, etc., instead of folding them neatly and putting it anywhere in his clothes without bothering to separate works, casual/home clothes. I put my own and my kids' clothes neatly and in their place because kid is 3 and they haven't learned this chore yet. It's petty and gives me a little bit of satisfaction to not make any extra effort or thought when I'm getting none. So I guess as a short-term, petty band-aid, revenge, back and forth, this is okay, but obviously it can't continue. If you're married to this person, you've got a kid, at some point you need to sit down and discuss what's bothering each of you about each other and work through it. That's what marriage is all about. Sufficient Dig 2845 replied, my husband works full-time and I currently work part-time, 4 hours per day. No kids, but I'm getting a work-intensive degree online. And we still have a cleaning lady for our 1-bedroom apartment twice a week. We have a wonderful relationship and rarely argue, maybe once a year now, but the one thing we used to argue about all the time was cleaning, and I think this is common for many couples. My husband deposits a fixed amount in my bank account every month for spending money and to pay said maid. I used to make more money than him, but we moved for a once-in-a-lifetime job opportunity for him to a place where there just aren't many job options for me. I still make some money, but he now makes the big bucks, and even though he works 12 hours a day, sometimes 6 days a week for most months of the year, he says we're in a partnership and I support him so that he's able to do his job and have an amazing domestic life, and therefore is reasonable with his expectations and happy to budget money for help. I know many people can't do this, but if your husband is a doctor, you should be able to afford some help, at least with snow clearing, and hopefully once a week with childcare or cleaning. In the meantime, with your kid, you both have full-time jobs, so when he's at home, he should be expected to do half the childcare at least. A calm, non-angry conversation about where you're coming from may be more helpful for you in the long run than not folding his laundry. Our next story is, "You're the ugly one with the bad breath." I usually ignore the "hello, how are you?" and "hi, remember me" texts, just block them and move on with life. Lately, I've had a lot of free time, and so occasionally I'll play along just to see where it goes. "Who is this?" or "Is this Emily?" is usually good bait. After another exchange or two, they send me a picture of themselves. Yeah, right. A stock photo of a pretty East Asian young lady in a coy pose. If I get as far as receiving the picture, then I count that as a win. That's when I tell them, "Now I remember, you're the one with the bad breath." Then I block them and delete the convo. I don't know if anybody even reads that response. It's downright petty, but it's fun, and it passes the time. Bit confused here, like I don't think these are just random texts that OP's receiving. Surely this has to be like on a dating app of some sort, right? And he's getting catfished or getting hit up by spam accounts, I don't know. But you guys know I am always down to scam a scammer, so go ahead and throw that boomerang right back at him. Our next story is a little bit salty. About 17 years ago, I was spending the summer in my village with my family and friends from there. It's very common to get together with friends, buy some meat, and grill it at night. In fact, there are several barbecue grills in the park. That night, I was in charge of controlling the fire and the meat. As I said, there are several barbecue grills, so another group of young people, about 5 years older than us, came and sat at the grill next to us. Then, the one in charge of their dinner, let's call him Rio, started criticizing my work. "This is too burnt, this is too raw," and things like that. I can accept criticism, but not being treated in a condescending way, as if I were an idiot. So when Rio went to get a beer, I took the opportunity to unload all the salt I could fit in my hand on all the meat on his grill. Later, I was talking to my cousin, who belonged to the same group of friends as Rio. My cousin was eating a steak, and I could see on his face how he was getting dehydrated with each bite, and he ended up telling me, "The freaking steak is crunchy because of the amount of salt that this idiot put in it." A little while ago, I confessed to my cousin what I did at that dinner, which made him start laughing. It turns out that they've been laughing at Rio for all these years for what happened, to the point that they don't let him near the grill when they meet for dinner. Plus, he promised to keep it a secret. He doesn't like Rio very much either. Once again, what goes around comes around. If you're willing to be hypercritical of everything, you're basically setting yourself up for something like this to happen to you. Just imagine how much salt you would have to pour on a steak to actually make it crunchy. Ugh. Our next story is, no tips? No problem. I'll keep it short. I work in the crappiest pub after the new owners bought it. They have destroyed everything that made this place amazing. Not only is it pulling teeth with them to get our cash outs, between all the illegal crap they've done, and literally the owner took my coworker's tips on her purse on purpose, we realized that the kitchen has not received their tip out after the increase in December. It's been 2 months, so in true freak-off petty fashion, every single shift this week, I've put around $150 I've had to give back in nickels and dimes. Can't say I fault this. This is infinitely more funny because they broke it down into coins. That's terrible. Catless Boy Mom replied, "Buying revenge a nickel and dime at a time. Seriously though, report or sue them for wage theft. Also, tell all your customers not to bother tipping since you won't see the money anyway." Our next story is, a break deserves a break. Many years ago, my class went to a theme park. There is a gift shop, and I spent most of my money buying my mom a porcelain cat in a basket. The cat was stuck to the basket. It was real cute. About an hour before we were due to leave, I was in the arcade, playing an analog submarine game. I did say many years. This kid was running full speed up and down the arcade and jumping off a set of steps just behind me and to my right. He kept running past, and then on one of his passes, he kicked the box that my mom's cat was in. I opened the box and saw the cat was out of the basket. I saw red. It was probably not done on purpose looking back. He probably slipped and kicked it. I didn't care. With the most perfect timing I've ever managed, I stuck my leg out backwards as he ran past towards the steps and felt his leg hit mine like a perfect golf shot. Then I heard a crack and the kid started screaming. I leaned down and lifted my box and walked slowly out. He didn't know it was me. Later on the bus, 2 teachers addressed all of us. The kid had broken something in his leg and had to go to the hospital. They absolutely glared at every single one of us, threatening us that no one would go home until they found the culprit. It was hot and heavy for about 15 minutes, but I didn't crack. That was when I discovered I had a talent for lying convincingly in extreme situations. I didn't mean for the kid to break anything. I felt bad about it afterwards. It's 50 years later, and I see the cat on my mom's kitchen window every time I visit. I remember the screaming. As long as there's some remorse for the kid like badly injuring himself, I totally understand the position here of OP. Also sounds like the teachers were just all bark and no bite. Dino1 commented, "Nice, teachers holding kids hostage in a bus in hot weather. Way to have multiple lawsuits opened up against you. I mean, OP said this was at a theme park, so who's to say the culprit couldn't have been another park goer? Or the kid running didn't trip over something else? I mean, we know it was OP's leg, but how could the teachers assume it was someone from that class in an open to the public place?" Our next story is, Optics Store refused support for reading glasses. So this happened a few years ago, back when I still dated a girl that lived not near me. She was wearing reading glasses. One day, she went with her mother to the Optics Store, a well-known Portuguese brand of stores with shops all over the country. She went in there to get a new glasses frame. I think that's the term anyway. English is not my native language. When she left, she saw some markings. Those were markings left by the machine holding the lenses during the process. It was a harsh strike, like a small cut in the lens itself, not something we could swipe over with a cloth and liquid. She complained to the store, but they only told her they couldn't do anything regarding it. It was normal for the process. I was not with her at the time, but when she told me that, I was quite mad actually. She sent me photos of the lens, and it was just plain ridiculous. I don't remember if she had the same lens and was only replacing the frame, or if she got completely new glasses, but either way, the lens should not be delivered with that defect. It would affect her sight. So I went to my computer, searched the Optics Store online, didn't find anything specific to that store, but I found the main website. I thought, this should help anyway. I wrote a ravaging email explaining the situation. Again, this was too long ago. I don't remember if I sent them photos or anything more, but what I know was, around 1 hour or less after I sent the email, I got my girlfriend's mother calling me and asking me what I've done. I was kind of speechless because I was just about to tell her about the email. Well, I tried to wait a bit and see if it helped or not before I could jump to any conclusion. The thing is, after my email, they called my girlfriend asking her to go back to the store so they could replace the lenses, for free. I don't remember to specify the store's location, but they somehow managed to find the store and the client in a record time. I was like, oopsie, did I do that? Sorry, not sorry. That's no way to treat a client. Yeah, of course not. Anything to do with health and safety, you really owe it to the client to give them the best service and best care possible. So glad that this was able to be worked out and she got better glasses. Low Myope commented, "When spectacle lenses are cut, they have a block stuck onto the front surface and are ground down on a lathe to match the shape of whatever frame they will be put into. Once the lens is cut to size, the block is removed, and the edges will be polished. Don't want sharp edges. It isn't normal to end up with a gouge out of the lens. What has probably happened is that the technician has slipped while screwing the lens into the frame and has caught the lens with a screwdriver. Any competent and reasonable optics store would notice this before handing them over. If they don't, they should certainly notice it if the patient brings them back. So the revenge was appropriately petty." Our next story is, wait your turn. Recently, I was in one of those 90-plus minute lines at Universal. Everyone was slowly shuffling along. I also like to give space to the people in front of me so I'm not all up in their biz. Well, at one point, I leaned up against a railing to stretch out my back. The old lady behind me took that as her cue to get directly behind the people in front of me. And I mean so close to them that if they turned sideways, they would hit her. So when I was done stretching, I squeezed right up in front of her and bumped her gently. That wasn't enough for her. 10 minutes later, same story. This time I wasn't even stretching, just waiting for a moment before shuffling forward to give the folks in front of me some space again. This old bat walked around me to get in front of me again. At this point, I even heard her about 10-year-old grandson complain to her about her cutting people in line. She fussed that, quote, people should be moving forward. This time I was less subtle. I got back in front of her and shoved her back hard. The rest of our wait was uneventful. Yeah, never understood this. crowding people doesn't make the line go any faster, it doesn't get you to your destination any quicker. So just respect personal boundaries, like going out of your way to cut someone in line because they're not moving and crowding like you are is absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, you deserve to get bumped, lady. Sorry, not sorry. Reasonable Blood 6959 commented, "I'll never understand the need to stand as close as physically possible to the people in front. It makes literally zero difference to how fast the line moves. A little bit of breathing room is especially welcome in the summer Florida humidity." Anonymous replied, "Seems so long ago when we were mandated to keep at least 6 feet apart. I was actually thankful for that portion of the COVID fallout." Alright everybody, that's all the time we have for today. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to like and comment down below. And if you want to check out any of our other videos, click the video on the right. With that being said, I'll see you all next time.